Ashley Bressel, and today I'm going to be talking about why teenagers and adolescents should have limited use of social media. So first, before we begin, I want to go over some objectives that I'm going to present to you today. So first and foremost, what generation is affected most by overusing social media? We're going to look at the problems social media creates for adolescents and teenagers, specifically looking at their mental health, self-image, relationships, and cyberbullying. Also, we're going to go over why parents and members of society should care about social media use and how they can make a change. And secondly, what will happen if this issue is not addressed and what we can do to change it. So first off, who does social media impact? So social media strongly impacts adolescents and teenagers. So this is mostly because adolescents and teenagers use social media most out of any generation prior. Social media has become a daily staple in their lives. So adolescents are constantly using social media, whether that be for school, for friends, for relationships. They're constantly using social media to interact with their peers. And lastly, adolescents and teenagers begin to lack face-to-face communication skills. So because they're using social media so frequently, they're beginning to lack certain skills that that other generations would have been able to have because they didn't use social media. So one of the implications that social media has is on adolescents and teenagers' mental health. So many studies have found that adolescents and teenagers were more likely to develop anxiety and depression. So current studies show that the more that adolescents and teenagers use social media, so the more amount of time that they used it, not necessarily the amount of social media sites that they used, show that they had more anxiety and depression because of the different aspects of social media that's impacting them. They also developed negative feelings about oneself and others. So this makes sense because if they're developing anxiety and depression, that leads to them having emotional feelings, and that's inwardly and outwardly, so they start viewing themselves negatively. And then these issues can lead to adolescents and teenagers hurting themselves and others. So if somebody becomes depressed, very depressed, then they may end up hurting themselves to the point of suicide, or they may hurt someone else because they don't feel accepted into society. Another implication is that social media negatively impacts adolescents and teenagers' self-image. So adolescents and teenagers seek to build specific reputations. So adolescents and teenagers are at the age where they're trying to be accepted by their peers and trying to find their place in society. So reputation is a very big thing, especially in high school. They're trying to find their identity. So social media is a way for adolescents and teenagers to express their identity, but in a way that's different from peer-to-peer relationships, face-to-face. So reputation is highly at stake on social media. So again, because social media is such a great place to build or bring down a reputation, is the main spot for adolescents and teenagers to build reputations. And they can do this through images, through what they say, through the people they interact with, and any little thing could make or break that reputation. And current studies have shown that adolescents and teenagers have higher levels of comparison and envy when they use social media. And this again is because they're seeing what other people are posting as their reputation, whether that's actually factual or not. It's showing that they are comparing their reputation to somebody else, and if it's what they want instead of their own reputation, then they're going to be envious of that. Another implication is social media's negative impact on relationships. So teenagers and adolescents in the current studies showed that they did not view social media as a means for social interactions. So what that showed was that they didn't really see social media as the same as socially interacting with their peers on a face-to-face basis. So this shows that the relationships that they're building on social media aren't the same relationships that they're building on a face-to-face basis. They're instead using social media to observe the lives of others. So if we look back at the other slide that we had when we talked about comparison and envy, so what they're saying is that adolescents are observing the lives of others on those social media sites to build that reputation. So they're not really using it to build relationships. And a good example of this is actually this painting right here in this slide. This was done by Banksy. It's called Mobile Lovers. And what it shows and what he illustrates through this painting is that people are more obsessed with building a relationship with the technology and the social media that they have rather than with the people on the other end. So they're not building quality relationships with their peers, but instead building relationships with the social media and the reputations that they're building on those. Lastly, another implication is going to be that social media negatively impacts and creates cyberbullying and cyber aggression. So several studies showed that adolescents and teenagers built and maintained reputations that exuded respect and power. So again, they're using social media to build reputations and to show that they have more power or a better reputation than others, than their other peers. And what they found as well was that there happened to be cyberbullying happened more frequently and was accepted in certain circumstances. So several studies showed that adolescents and teenagers who use cyberbullying towards a friend was unaccepted, but if it was used toward somebody that they didn't know, it was more accepted. So why should we care, and what can parents do and society do? So why is this important? So we need to bring awareness to parents and society on the negative impacts that social media has on adolescents and teenagers. So that way they can limit the amount of time that adolescents are spending on social media. So what can parents and society do? So they can limit the amount of time adolescents and teenagers spend using social media sites. So this could be setting frequent times that they use social media, not giving them phones that allow social media or computers that allow social media. So parents really need to take the time to assess how many social media sites are my children using and how often do I want them to use that, because many parents don't really understand the negative impacts that it can have on society and their children. So again, they should limit the number of social media sites being used. So current studies show that both the amount of time social media was being used and the number of sites being used were both resulted in negative impacts on adolescents and teenagers. So it's important for parents and society to be aware of the negative impacts social media has on adolescents and teenagers, so that way they can counteract that and prevent those problems. So, and then we should also provide alternative environments that decrease social media use. So again, we should be trying to give adolescents and teenagers environments like sports or group activities in ways that they can limit their time on social media and instead interact with their peers. So in conclusion, social media can negatively impact adolescents and teenagers. So there's many implications. with social media, and again, looking at their mental health, their self-image, relationships, and cyberbullying. And parents and members of society should get involved and make a change, because if they don't, then the problems are going to get worse. Every adolescent and teenager, if they continue to use social media, the amount and number of sites that they're using, there's going to be continuous problems with their mental health, self-image, cyberbullying, and relationships.